All right. I think we got this fixed. Woo! Give me a thumbs up if you can see this. Man, I am super excited. Woo! We are now live, and I believe you can see us. If you can see us, give us a thumbs up in the chat. Give us something that you can see us. You can hear me. Can you see us? Can you actually see us? If you can see us, give me a thumbs up. It looks like we're good on Facebook. And let me try something here. Patrick, why don't you get some intros going on, man? What's going on here?
Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. There. All right.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. And how was your month, man?
My month was outstanding. Yeah. Outstanding. We family's good. Everybody's good. I'm so glad that the weather's getting cooler.
Amen.
For us bigger guys.
That's right.
We're done. We're done sweating like carnitas, man. The weather definitely helps out.
Yes. Go ahead, man.
We're just on fire. We just came back from a retreat. My wife and I worked, and just to see marriages healed, and once again, lives restored, and I never get tired of it. I never stop being in awe of God, and because He never stops doing it. So that was this month for us.
Yeah, man. And what did you see over there, man? What did you see at the retreat? What did you see with the men, especially?
The men, especially, because you go up on Friday night, and then it's Friday night to Saturday, and you leave Sunday afternoon. And Friday, my wife dragged me up here. I lost a bet. I don't even believe in God. There's some. I mean, they're just
all those
forced to be there. But they're trying to get somebody off their back, or just to satisfy like the person that wants them to be there. And then by Sunday, they're just transformed. Just transformed in 48 hours. To see that they actually believe in God now, or something's happened in their heart.
That is so cool, man. Patrick, thanks for being that piece, man, and stepping into that role there, man. And if you didn't hear Patrick's story, episode 21 on YouTube and Facebook, you can watch it. And it's got some powerful nuggets, man. But we are back with Sharpen, man. We had some technical difficulties, man, but we are live. And if you're tuning in, go ahead and hit the share button on Facebook. If you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like, subscribe. Get the hearts, all that stuff. Let's get the algorithms up to get this word out, man, because I am excited. I got an amazing story. And if you heard the intro song, man, who was that? Chris Jericho?
That's Chris Jericho.
Yeah, and what was the name of the title?
Breaking Down Walls.
Breaking Down Walls, man. I like that song. I was like ready to pull my ponytail out, but I forgot I didn't have any.
We're starting a little late because of technical difficulties, but earlier when we started this, I said I don't run, but if I heard that song, it might get me on the treadmill,
right? And
I might put that bad boy to about 3. And that song would make Patrick Correa do a very brisk walk.
Yeah, I heard that. That's good. Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited, man, because I get to highlight another story here on Sharpen, and really what Journeyman is establishing communities of commitment and support and accountability for one another. And man, we just love to see men living out the mission in the areas of faith, family, community, and that's what we want to do. We want to sharpen each other through these podcasts. And man, if you haven't tuned into one, man, go back and look at the other ones. There's just some amazing stories on this podcast, and we're at episode 22.
Wow.
22, really? Man, that's quick. In 1 year, 22 episodes.
I know.
That's nuts, man. We need to slow
paid
down.
for one of them yet.
Right, exactly. Me neither. Me neither, man. That means we ain't doing that good. Got some work to do, man. But I'm excited about this conversation tonight, man, because Jason Conway, man, he's got a powerful story surrounding coming from addiction and so much, man. And he's doing some good things in our city, and it's a great honor, man, to have an hour with you and some change, man, to have you on this podcast. And, I appreciate your time and being humble, man, and saying yes to this, man, and doing what God's called you to do. And The Modesto Gospel Mission is located obviously in Modesto, but you can scan it here and get some more information there on your Q code, and that's there for you. But do us a favor, go ahead and continue to reshare this on Facebook, and let's get the word out because the story is powerful, man. So let's dive into it, man. Who is Jason Conway? Tell us a little bit, man. Yeah, thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who I am, I guess, is number one, I'm a husband.
Yeah.
I'm a father. And in primary, I'm an example. I'm an example of God's grace,
Yes.
His mercy in my life. And I want to show that example to other men and women who are struggling. And they could be struggling with all kinds of things because we're all diversified. We all have traumas. We all have a past. But there is a purpose and there can be a promise of a future that isn't clouded in depression. It isn't clouded in addiction, but there's hope out there.
It's good.
And I try to live my life as that example.
Yeah. So Jason, man, were you born and raised in Modesto, or what does that look like for you?
I was born in Modesto. I was raised in Riverbank, Ceres. I spent some time off of Glen Avenue, right here off of Dara. Lived in some pretty bad areas of Modesto and Riverbank and Ceres. But I grew up here most of my life.
Nice. So Jason, growing up, man, like where did your life really start, man? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up as in a trailer park in Riverbank, California.
Wow.
You know, that's kind of where it all started, off of Topeka and off that. You know, just kind of was just a kid. You know, growing up, just just trying to enjoy life and basically to fast forward. You know, my mom and dad ended up converting. We ended up turning in and becoming a Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And really from the age of 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, I was knocking on doors and suit and tie it. And we were living a pretty good life, disciplined, structured. It was a religious household. And that was kind of one part of my life. And from that point, we can go into what kind of went right and wrong, what went wrong.
Yeah, no, let's if you can scoot up to the mic a little bit so make sure everybody can hear you. But man, so tell us that experience, man, about somebody knocking on your door and the Jehovah's Witness. Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was different. I was kind of grateful because my mom and dad, they struggled with addiction a little bit when I was a kid. And to see them kind of overcome that and to have a disciplined life, it was kind of as a kid, as really a teenager, I was kind of grateful for it, and really bought into it. Not to be honest with you, and was going out every Saturday knocking on doors, and really was just a kid, didn't know what was going on, but I was grateful for the structure around me and the accountability of my mom and dad at that point in time.
Yeah, you got anything, Patrick? Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, like, is that something that your father or your mom came to, and then was it your dad that said, I'm going to become a Jehovah's Witness, or your mom that said, I'm going to become Jehovah's Witness, or you don't?
They both it
kinda.
was kind of both simultaneously. They had like studied with Jehovah's Witnesses off and on, and then finally really dove right all in.
Wow.
And you stayed that through all your teenage years?
Yeah, so basically the story of it is my mom and dad they fell back into addiction when I was 16, and I was I was homeschooled because of being a Jehovah's Witness, and I just didn't want to live that life anymore. I guess I was I hated my parents for doing that again. And so I take off. Basically, at that point, I was done with them, and I just take off and I go to stay with my grandma in Arizona. Wow. And that's really where I didn't have that parental consent over my life. Yeah, I was free to make my own choices, and that's where I started pivoting down the wrong path.
Yeah. So looking at that now, man, now you're in Arizona with grandma. Is that some sense of freedom that you felt, or kind of just running away from what you were thinking of or dealing with?
My intent wasn't ever to fall into a life of addiction at all.
Yeah.
And that wasn't my intent. My intent was to continue to serve God in that religious organization, basically, and to live that life. That was what my intent was. Yeah. But my choices were so immature, and I didn't know how to make my own choices. That was because I was always told, this is what you got to do. It was a very,
that's good.
I didn't know how to make those right choices in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So those, Man, it sounds like a lot of structure then was kind of almost, well, somewhat a structure
It
and
was
instruction.
structured.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was structured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in those moments, man, and now growing up in Arizona, man, you went to high school there?
No, I didn't
No?
go to high school there.
Okay.
Actually, I started working.
Okay.
Basically, just to be honest and open, I began going and getting my grandma a beer out of the fridge
Yeah.
and sneaking a Bud Light.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, I'm sneaking 2 or 3. The next thing I know, my grandma's like, why don't you come on in here and just drink a beer with me?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it all began.
Wow.
And then from that was just completely, I fell into alcoholism real quick.
Mm,
I found a joy not only of drinking, but getting drunk.
mm.
And that's what really started leading me into a path of just destruction.
Yeah. Wow.
So you're 16 years old in Arizona, living with your grandmother. Now, was your grandmother Jehovah's Witness also?
No, she wasn't.
Okay. Okay. Did she have any faith background?
No.
Or just kind of taking care of you?
Just taking care of me.
Yeah.
And then, so the alcoholism, basically, because there was no structure, you found yourself going from one beer for grandma to one beer for you,
Yeah.
and 3 and 4. And
You
so
got
you're
it.
16,
Wow.
16 years old,
Mhm.
full on getting drunk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
basically how it started.
Wow.
And your parents are still in California?
yes,
And did you have any brothers and sisters?
I had a brother. Yes.
Okay. Was there any communication with you guys during that time?
Not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in Arizona, 16,
Mhm.
and a full on drinking with
Wow.
grandma, drinking with
Yeah.
grandma.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
Yeah.
Basically, I ended up, just kind of going down a path of just drinking, smoking weed, and then I was introduced to one night I was drunk and I was introduced to methamphetamine,
Wow.
and I think I was 18. And you got to understand, I hated methamphetamine. I hated
Yeah.
drugs because I seen what it did to my parents, and I just hated it.
Right.
But still, I was vulnerable. I was drunk. You don't make
Yeah.
right decisions when you're drinking.
Right.
And then I made that choice to use, and I was automatically hooked. I mean, I was hooked. It just was an instant thing. I mean, and for all the wrong reasons. It
Yeah.
was just, it was weird, but I was hooked, and that was really how it all began. That's the downfall of the path that I continued on for about 7 years.
Wow, man.
Ended up coming back in 2001, moving back to Modesto. I had gotten in a small town of Arizona, got into drugs, thought I can come back to Modesto and get clean and sober, and
Yeah.
attempted to do that. And it just didn't happen. And it not only didn't happen, it just got worse.
Yeah.
And basically at the age of 24, I'm basically almost homeless at that point. But I ended up getting reconciled back to my mom and building that relationship. And then by the time I'm 26, 27, I'm living on the streets of Modesto. I was,
Wow.
Yeah.
basically I'm on the streets. I was able to avoid being on the streets for working and staying in hotel rooms. So 25, 26, I'm hoteling it. I'm at the Tropics, El Capitan, Modesto Inn,
Yeah.
and just living that lifestyle. But what was going on behind the scenes is the methamphetamine was drawing me into a psychosis.
Mm.
And that psychosis was just drawing me away from people. And that paranoia was beginning to happen. And just the reality of what I was facing wasn't really going on. But in my mind, it was happening, and it was getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And the more that I would communicate to the people around me that love me, the more that they would say that isn't going on. So I would separate myself from them because I didn't want to fall into the reality.
Yeah.
I had so much slipped into a psychosis and mental health that I was lost out there on the streets for the longest time.
Wow, man, that's so, man. So the 26 years old, hopping from hotel to hotel in the city of Modesto.
Yeah. Mhm.
Can you share with us some of those experiences, man? Like when how were the resources then? Like how were they then with you? And what
This
did you
might sound
experience?
crazy, but I'm so grateful I was an introvert
Yeah.
in that time because I didn't want to hang out with anybody.
Yeah.
So that was so grateful. I really didn't like.
Mhm.
I wanted to not. I didn't have really a social life. I mean, I was hopping bars from up and down McHenry.
Right.
The alcohol always brings a different side of you out. So I
Mhm.
was always a little bit more friendly and extroverted when I was drinking.
Yeah.
But I was grateful that I didn't really fall into. I was really introverted. I was paranoid too at the same time.
Yeah.
But that probably saved my life, to be
Right.
honest with you.
Mm.
So those types of things are probably, I look back and I'm like, man, I'm kind of grateful that I was that way because it kept me away from the riffraff. It kept me away from making or getting into the wrong circles, even though yeah, I was using,
Right.
I was isolated from all that drama and that mess that I
Yeah.
didn't get really wrapped up in the game, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. And the addiction, man, like that was there. And how did you, I mean, share a little bit from your heart, like what, how did that addiction come to you? Like what were you feeling? Like what void were you trying to fill? I guess that if you can think back now.
There's no void that I was trying to fill myself. It's
Mhm.
just that feeling of getting loaded and high that
Yeah.
just resonated with me
Mm.
all the way around. Like I said, when I was drinking, I wasn't so introverted. I was more social. So that all comes into effect.
Yeah.
And then with just the methamphetamine, it was just that instant high. And
Mm.
it's hard to describe, but
Yeah.
you just get hooked.
Right.
And when I say it, I mean that.
Yeah.
I was instantly hooked on that
Mhm.
high.
Wow.
And I just have that personality too that, when I try something, I dive 100% in. So if
Yeah.
it's addiction, I'm all in on
Right.
that. If it's something else, I'm all in. So with it, when it came to that addiction, I was just completely all in.
Wow, man. You got anything, Patrick?
Yeah, you said that somewhere in there that you had a job.
Mhm.
Like I was addicted, but I was working.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What were they just side jobs or
No, no. I mean, I found a really good pathway. I would say a career in sales. I was always really from 18, 19, just really good at it. And I got away with my addiction because I was so good at it. They
Mm.
didn't care if I was using as long as I was meeting my quota
Wow.
and getting
Yeah.
through it.
Wow.
So it took an extreme measure for them to finally let me go and fire me.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then at that point, that's when I didn't have any income and I couldn't afford it anymore.
Yeah. Wow.
But the pivotal point, I want to just add this
Yeah.
is, I was at the Tropics on McHenry, and it's a hotel. And I remember going up to my room, and all of a sudden, I can't even see myself in the mirror. Basically,
Yeah.
I'm looking in the mirror, and it's just like the demonic is just coming.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to explain that I get a towel from the raft and I put it over my head, and I go down the staircase and I walk all the way down McHenry Avenue. And I'm just trying to find the first church. And I'm just
Right.
being honest. And I
Yeah.
don't really know. I mean, again, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, but that's a whole different
Yeah.
thing. But I didn't know what the sinner's prayer
Yeah.
was. I didn't really have a relationship with God,
Mm.
but I just knew I had to get on that church property. And I hit Centenary Methodist Church off of 2K in McHenry.
Wow.
And I get on that church property and I cry out to God. And I'm telling you what, that was a pivotal point in my life
Yeah.
where I knew God was real.
Wow.
Wow.
Because I cried out to him and I didn't even know what I was crying out, but I was just like, just help me.
Yeah.
And when I walked away, I knew there was something different that happened.
Yeah.
And it was the most remarkable thing that I experienced with God, but I knew that he loved me
Yeah.
and I knew he had a plan for me. And I just had to get out of my own way.
Yeah. Wow, man. That's beautiful.
So how old were you when that happened?
Yeah.
25, 26. And you
Yeah.
got to understand, after that prayer, I still struggled. It wasn't like,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
instant.
No.
Like
Yeah.
I still struggled because, I went back and I'm living in the same mess and the same addiction and God's speaking to my heart, not in an audible sense, because
Yeah.
I'm going through enough. I'm trying to what's reality, what's real, like what's going on here. And you got to filter all of this in. But with God, it was just something in my heart.
Yeah.
And I had my aunt, and that's the only person at that point that I knew that went to church.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody else. I'm like, hey, Pam, like, what's going on here? And I told her the experience, and all she says, well, you can just pray on it. She gives me good advice. I still don't know.
Yeah.
But something in the Lord was telling me to walk out that door, and he's going to show me a different way.
Wow.
And I couldn't
Wow.
get out that door, basically, because I was still stuck in my addiction and my ways.
Mm.
So basically, it took a sheriff knocking on that door
Yeah.
and serving me those papers before I found that different way.
Wow.
Yeah. So you were in the hotel room
Mhm.
and you, even not knowing the Lord and not knowing the sinner's prayer or anything like that, there's a serious, and I think that's something that we just forget about sometimes, the seriousness of evil.
Yeah.
I
Oof.
mean, that stuff
It's
is
a real
real.
thing.
And
Mhm.
so I come from a background of non-belief, and
Yeah.
I might turn to tell my story, but I mean,
Yeah.
during those times, I remember a couple times where it wasn't the goodness of God that I thought was real, because I thought God was fake.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there was a couple times where the evilness that I felt, I
Yeah.
was like, this, I don't believe in God, but there's something going on here.
Right.
And then
That's
the
good.
nightmares, and then
Oh,
then I'm a former user too, so I remember this like up all night. I
Mhm.
remember the
Yeah.
going, am I awake or am I not? But the evil,
Yeah.
how evil that stuff is real.
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, I remember mainly at when I was staying at the Modesto Inn off of Needham, and I was in my room, and it was the evil that was in that room that made me run out of that room and run to God, man.
Wow.
So I mean, there was a reality, and then again, when you separate yourself from it, you're like, man, what was that all about? But you know that's a reality, and again, that's what led me to really run to God a little bit, because when that happens in front of you, and you're the only one in the room, and there's something going on,
I feel like hugging you because unless you've been there, it's a Hollywood movie to people.
Right.
Or they're listening to the pod, they're like, that sounds kind of fake.
Right.
But to those that have actually seen that and been there, you can't make that stuff up.
Right.
That literally happened.
Yeah.
And so that stuff is real.
Yeah.
I had a brother. Sorry, really quick. He didn't know the Lord, but there was something planted in his heart. He goes, I just had this moment of reflection of a bumper sticker I saw, or a T-shirt I saw somebody wear, or just advertising, like the bus stops that said Jesus saves or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was never like presenting the gospel, but he remembers these signs here and there. So shout out to the advertisement world of the Christian ministry.
Yeah.
They think that okay, it's just another billboard. Here we go. It's just another bus stop. There we go. It's another T-shirt. Here we go. Another bumper sticker. Yeah, but you never know who that's going to touch.
Exactly.
You never know who needed to see that, and that might be the seed planted for the guy at McHenry that's running out of his, hotel room because of the evilness. So I just want to throw that out there.
I was lost, and I ended up, after all of that, on the streets, living in the parks, and living in and just knowing, and that wasn't comfortable either.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at Loma Park and living there. I mean, not living there, but sleeping there. And like 2 o'clock, sprinklers come on. So you move over here, then they come over and over there. And I finally find myself underneath the bench, and it was just like, so I walk over, and this, I was born and raised in Modesto.
Yeah.
Never really stepped foot in the gospel mission my whole life.
Yeah.
But it was at that point that I walked in those doors, and I didn't know they had a program. I didn't know they had any of this, that I just was like, I need a place to stay.
Yeah.
And I didn't care what it was.
Right.
And then I was tricked into joining the program there.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I didn't know I was joining the program, or they had a program. I was like, yeah, you're going to give me a place to stay. Great. Got him.
Yeah.
So like 2 weeks in, I'm coming out of the psychosis. I'm starting to sober up. My mind's starting to come back. And one of the supervisors was like, hey, you plan on sticking around here? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Sticking around? Yeah. After 30 days, do you plan on doing the 18-month program?
Yeah.
And I was more relieved than I was like, oh, yes, great.
Yeah.
I have a place to go.
Right.
And that was really where God began to work in my life in a mighty way.
Man.
Because we're going to go further into where you're at now. But for those listening, and they've just kind of tuned in, or who's this Jason guy anyways? The same gospel mission that you walked into, strung out and kind of still working. The same person that was sleeping in these kind of seedy hotels, the same person sleeping on the park bench, it's the same person, dodging sprinklers at 2 o'clock. That same person that we see on the street is the CEO of the Missional Gospel Mission.
Yeah. Not only that, the same person talking to himself, the same person, beating up his own shadow. That was me.
Wow.
That was who I was. That was what I was led to be. And really, when we go back into it, suicide had crossed my mind, and I remember that day vividly, where I just wanted to end it. And God said, go around the block, or I didn't even know it was God's point, but I look back and I know exactly who it was. So I walk around the block of Johnson Street, up McHenry, back down Modesto Avenue, back up. And I just felt this, oh my goodness, just that moment of clarity hit me, where I came back to my right mind again. And I remember just crying out to God, I'll never do that again. And I'm so sorry that I even thought that. But I mean, it happened so fast, where, like that spirit of suicide came over me, that I was like, it's time to check out. And God intervened that day in my life too. It's just that testimony is real.
Yeah.
And it just makes me want to love God even more, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
So you get into the Missional Gospel
Yeah.
Mission, you go through these programs, then what happens?
Yeah, so I go in and really from the very beginning, I knew like, oh my gosh, you can make a career and do something like this. This is
Yeah.
what's going through my mind
Yeah.
because they're serving.
Right.
I've never served before, even
Yeah.
growing up as a Jehovah's Witness. You don't serve. I mean, you're just knocking on doors,
Yes.
but you're not really serving.
Yeah.
You know, and like it was giving me joy.
Mm.
I was finding self-worth in serving. I lost my identity in who I was.
Yeah.
And when I lost my identity of who I was, my mind started making up a false reality to give me hope.
Wow.
Because I lost everything that it was to be a man, everything it was to be who I was, that I started to make up this false pretense and this false reality so to give me something to live for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then basically I'm like, oh, this is great. So I started just going 100% and just doing what I needed to do.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I just started, committing to doing it on to the Lord.
Yeah.
And that's what I started to do, and not to make excuses, not to make any type of outweighs.
Yeah.
Even though that I would remotely think, oh man, I'm out of here. I'm going to
Yeah.
leave here.
Right.
But man, God would intercede on my life so many
Mm.
times that I can't take credit for really anything. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Totally, man. So, man, talk a little bit about, okay, so coming out of your addiction into the gospel
Yeah.
mission, and now coming out of like, the 30-day, and then who was it that made you stick around? Who was that mentor?
Yeah,
Who was that voice
There was
besides
two,
God,
yeah,
right?
there was two people. There was my mentor, Mike McCauley, and Kevin Thomas, who
Mhm.
were critical in my life. And hearing their testimony, even with Mike McCauley, he would set up in front of us, and he was the director of operations at that point at the mission.
Mhm.
And he was talking about like how he would slam dope, and he would like go into the park toilets to get his rig ready.
Wow.
And when I heard that, I was like, there's hope.
Yeah.
You got to see a physical example of somebody overcoming it, because you don't think you can do it.
Yeah.
And so that was really it. And I just had a great chaplain. I mean, Kevin was my chaplain at that
Yeah.
point. He was kind of a laid back kind of guy.
Mhm.
I mean, I was still dealing. I mean, it was strict.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is what the craziness about that strictness was, is I tucked myself back when I was 12, 13, living at home, and my
Mm.
dad was strict.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that we watched, everything
Mhm.
that we did was strict. So I already knew how to live a strict life.
Yeah.
So it really helped me. I mean, it probably saved me from staying there. So I was like, yeah, this is great. I
Yeah.
need this.
Yeah.
I need this. Like, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm like, yeah, just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Because I didn't buy into my way. I wanted a
Mm.
whole new life.
Yeah.
And I needed somebody to tell me how to get there for a
Right.
minute.
Wow.
Your dad was Jehovah's Witness. Like,
Oh, yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
So I have a friend that was Mormon, and he was, in Australia knocking on doors and stuff like that. And now he's a pastor at a church down in Merced. But he said, I took that structure. It's a different Jesus.
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
It's definitely
yeah.
a different Jesus. He goes, but I took that structure and I applied it to
Yeah.
my ministry. And so he goes, it's those crazy years weren't all a waste. I God with that, how do I say this? He didn't follow through with
Yeah.
it, but the little things like structure, little things like
Mhm.
being open to go on, knock on doors, and being open to share the gospel, the true gospel. And now
Yeah.
he's in a position where he's taking those things, and it's not for naught.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I always look at it, no matter what, even Jesus can make himself known to anybody at
Right.
any given time.
Right.
He does it to Paul. He does it over and over and over again. And then just a moment, go back on McHenry, on 2K and Centenary Methodist. God made himself known to me that day.
Yeah.
And it was not at a Damascus moment, but it was my Damascus moment
Yeah.
that I still hold on to, because every time I drive by that place, it's sort of like my cornerstone. That's like, I just remember that day.
Yeah.
And it's really powerful.
Yeah.
That's your birthplace.
It
It's your
kind of was.
birthplace,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's my salvation story.
Yeah.
That was the moment salvation was birthed in my heart right
Wow.
there. Yeah. Before
Wow.
I even entered the mission
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah. No, that's amazing, man. So there might be some men out there that kind of resonate with this story, that maybe are just scrolling through and found Journeyman somewhere, man. And if you're that man that is dealing with addiction, maybe people don't even know. Maybe you look normal, or you're working and you're still dealing with addiction. Please tune into this story and hear the moments and times of change throughout Jason's life. And you can see and hear the progression as the journey of Jason kept going forward. And not everybody will end up at the gospel mission, but there's resource there.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about now. Man, dude, it's a powerful story. You are the product of the gospel mission, in a sense.
Yeah.
You stepped into the arena to one. It was like, I just need a place to stay, but God had other plans.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I mean, I was really hesitant to the whole Jesus thing from the beginning. I
Yeah.
did. It seemed foreign to me.
Mm,
And but to fast forward, I think it was 6 or 7 months that God just won me over by His love and His grace, still pursuing me.
yeah.
That I finally just submitted to God. Like,
Yeah.
okay, Lord, I give up.
Yeah.
And I knew that's where He wanted me to be.
Yeah.
So I committed to do an internship there
Mm,
about 17 years ago.
yeah.
And 16 years ago in 2007, I came on staff.
Yeah.
And I was just basically an entry level senior supervisor overseeing services.
Yeah.
And then slowly, I became an operations manager, director of operations, went back to school through Liberty University.
Yeah.
In my first year being director of operations, pursued my business degree and got that.
Mm.
Pastored a church in Oakdale,
wow.
California.
Really?
And really got all of that. Then finally, when I was the director of operations, there was a change of administration, and that's when the board came to me and was like, "Hey, we just want you to be the interim CEO." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, great,"
Yeah.
And I didn't.
What year is this?
Yeah.
This was in 2017.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So this is about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I could do it. And I was telling my wife, I could do this job. And I look back and I'm like, well, I don't know if I can. But I was telling her, but I just knew that's what.
Confidence.
Well,
Yeah.
it was God's
Yeah.
promise on me.
Right.
And I didn't really share that promise. I
Yeah.
might have told my wife and mom,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to run this place.
Yeah.
Guys
Yeah.
will say that all
Oh,
the time.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I've been hearing it from everybody. I
Yeah.
want your job. I'm going to run
Yeah.
it. But I really felt like God had placed me there.
Yeah.
And I was just ready for the right timing. But I was okay because I was pastoring in Oakdale.
Mm.
I was the director of operations. And when they found that right person, I was going to slide back into the role as the director of operations.
Yeah.
And then I'll just make a long story short. We take a trip. And on that trip, God just revealed to me, He's like, man, you're the guy that I want for this.
Wow.
And so I go back into a board meeting and I tell the board at that point, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, I know they had brought in candidates from all around. And I was like, hey, if I just want to put my name in the hat,
Yeah.
well, I got a call from the board chair.
Yeah.
And he's like, I thought we made ourselves pretty clear that you're not the guy. And I was like, yeah, okay.
So you're saying there's a
Yeah.
chance.
And there was no chance at that
Yeah.
point. So literally I go home and I tell my wife, Gina, I said, yeah, that's off the table.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out a plan. And my plan was to go ahead and finish school
Yeah.
and go ahead and get some more experience and then launch out.
Yeah.
And maybe launch out to another state, go
Right.
somewhere else and to do it. Well, not 3 days later, I get the same call 3 days later after I told my wife that this is off the board. I'm
Yeah.
not going to be the guy. They had done a search. They had done like a 3-round robin. 4 people came in for an interview and a tour of the mission. And the same board chair called me back and he's like, you know what? We want to give you another look.
Hey.
And it was a complete 360 of a turn.
Wow.
And I just knew God. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And so the amazing part of it is they brought in a consultant to consult, but the where I knew it was God, and this is not even planned, but there was supposed to be a board meeting and they had to be delayed because 2 board members couldn't show up. And then they rescheduled the board meeting, not really knowing, but the day that they had the board meeting and they called me was my birthday.
Wow.
To tell me that they're going to make me the CEO of the Modesto Gospel Mission.
Wow.
And I was like, are you guys kidding me? Yeah, it just knew from God.
Yeah.
And I even asked them, I said, do you guys know it was my birthday today? And they didn't know.
Wow.
And it was just another testimony of God's finger, His hand on me. And I need that, guys. I do.
Yeah.
It helps me because if I know God has placed me here,
Right.
then only He can take me out.
That's right.
And it does. Even though I try to carry a lot of weight on me. I just, at the end of the day, I'm grateful that God, that He's put enough markings in my life, little points of contact, so that I know that He's real, that He's in my life, and that he's got a purpose and a plan for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I have so many questions.
Go for it, man.
I'll forget all of them if I don't say something.
Yeah.
Number one, was it hard for the Jesus of the Jehovah Witnesses, the angel?
Man, we gave him water. Hold on.
I
We
know,
gave
sorry.
him water, man. Look at that.
I know that's the first
First guest with water.
Yeah, I'd say we paid for it, but I borrowed it from
I'm sorry,
the staff here.
Go ahead.
Now I forgot everything I was going to say.
Oh man, I know.
So, being raised Jehovah's Witness, so the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Jesus is Angel Michael.
Yeah.
And so for you, when it's conversion to accept Christ as a son of God, was it hard for you to accept Christ as God's word that became and died for our sins? I was like, how'd you get to this point? You pastored a church.
Yeah.
What was hard was that I once believed in something that wasn't true.
Mm.
And so when I came into this, it was like, yeah, you got to be very careful, because I believed what they, I bought in.
Yeah.
And, and I only to walk away and say, man, there's a lot of discrepancies of what I believed, and our minds we got to be very careful. So I was very hesitant to believe in anything. To be honest, I knew God was real.
Wow.
But I was very hesitant in believing anything anybody had to say, because I knew that I can be easily deceived.
That's good.
In believing. So I was like hesitant. So, but what that did was like, I'm going to search out who God is.
Good.
And one thing about the Modesto Gospel Mission is they wanted you to search out, and that was foreign to me. Like, what you?
That's good.
I can read this on my own, and you're not going to tell me what to read, what to do, and what to read.
That's good.
Because being a Jehovah's Witness is like living in a fishbowl.
Yeah.
And they control everything that you read, and they control everything that you know, and you can't divvy out of that fishbowl, because if you do, you're an apostate. You get excommunicated.
Wow.
So like the minute that you would go out and start learning what's really truth, you're cast out, basically.
Wow.
So when they said I can read God's word and figure out for it myself, and some of it, that's how it was. Like, hey, read it and figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Perfect. This is great. So yeah, and really what made me believe that Jesus was God was reading the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that sounds like Jesus. Just certain areas of the Old Testament, you're like, that's Jesus right there.
Yeah.
And that's what really led me into understanding that conversion story. But I had to fully unroot my roots as a Jehovah's Witness to make sure that was all gone. And so I was researching everything that I couldn't do at that point in time.
Yeah.
And
now you could.
And I could years away from it too. So I had myself in the world, so too. But I was really just studying, and then it would just reveal to me how false that was, and how true God's religion over here with being, who God is.
Yeah. That
personal connection with Jesus. And that was what it was all about. Like everything was about that with you. I want a relationship, get to know God on your own.
I come from a non-belief background, and I remember early on in my baby Christian days, a brother pulled me aside. Patrick, don't just remember, truth has no problem being investigated. And that really stuck with me.
Yep.
So truth had no problem. The second thing I was going to ask is, has anybody ever talked about praying for drug dealers? Because we talk about drug addicts, and I pray for but they're getting it from somewhere.
Yeah.
So you have to go out and actually get the drugs.
Yeah.
Is that something that has ever been addressed? Praying for drug dealers?
No, I don't think I've ever heard anybody pray for drug dealers, but there's a reality of it, man. There's a veil that needs to be lifted.
Yeah.
And that needs to be lifted from all angles of everything.
Yeah.
The drug world is the drug world.
Yeah.
And we know that there's a lot of money, and it runs a lot on its own, but like there's a veil, and it's hard to understand what that veil looks like. But when that veil is removed, you can clearly see, and you're like, oh man, I was so blinded because I couldn't see it. So I think if we're going to pray for drug dealers, just for that veil to be removed, and they can see the harm that they're doing. And I think if a person, it's hard when you see somebody's actions And if they're blinded, they don't see it, then they're going to continue to do it. But the moment that clarity happens, that God can intercept that and become real in that person's life, I think that would be a good, journey to be praying for those individuals that are selling those drugs on our streets, that veil be removed.
Yeah, no, that's so good, man. So, Jason, let's talk a little bit about the mission now, man. You're now the CEO of the Modesto Gospel Mission. When you took over, man, how was that feeling? What did that look like for you, man?
I was so naive that, honestly,
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I knew.
The guy that said, I could do this.
Right.
Don't worry about it. I got this.
Yeah.
Well, only looking back at the time, I believe that.
Yeah.
But when it's 6 years,
Yeah.
I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
they give me keys to the car. I'm so grateful I didn't crash it.
Right. Exactly.
Because I mean, and again, I was entrusted with the ministry. I think two things. I love that ministry because it changed my life.
Yeah.
I loved our community. I was born and raised here.
Yeah.
And I love the principle that there was a place that if somebody wanted to get their life together, there was a place they can go to.
Yeah.
And I think those three things catapulted such a passion in me that at the same time I was lateraling into business school, that I was getting competency to couple with the passion, with the experience.
Yeah.
And I had spent, 10 years in operations. So I knew the operations of the place. I had ran a budget as a director of operations. So I had some of those foundational things that it just all kind of connected. And ultimately God, if he's put a calling on your life, he's going to equip that.
Very true.
And so the room that, I look at a calling like a room. You walk in and you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I always feel comfortable in those shoes, even though there was sometimes I might not have known exactly what I was doing.
Yeah.
But he always was right there to kind of reveal and make sure that I did that. And I had a really good board at that point too, that mentored me and walked alongside of me.
Yeah.
And that, I knew really cared about me.
Yeah.
And that helped a lot too.
Yeah.
That they didn't want to put me in that position because they didn't want to harm me.
So
I really believe that.
So good. And I like that you highlighted that because, that's really what Journeyman is about, man. We want to identify men who are interested in feeling like they can do anything because of the support that they have, the people that they look around, no matter our weaknesses, no matter the things that we know we're weak at, right? We know we're weak at, but then there's something about that accountability portion where if I look back, I got Patrick to lean on in some sense to like dive in. Hey, we're going to dive in this fight together.
Yeah.
And hey, I might fall, but don't fix me, but you'll be able to push me.
Yeah.
And there's something about that when you got men around you or a community of support to help you elevate in the areas that you sometimes feel like, hey man, I'm not capable to do that.
Yeah.
And you're one of those testimonies. You're one of those stories. And the border's awesome, but the everything was against you. Addiction, the streets, drugs, homelessness. All of society said you should be dead right now.
But if God is for us, who can be against
exactly.
us?
Exactly. So good.
One more thing on that is like when I came into this role, I had every right to be, I had every right to surround myself with the right people.
Right.
To say that I could have been very like, I wasn't really, I was young.
Yeah.
At the point, I thought I was young at that role. And I was like 37 when I came into that role, and 43, be 44 in March.
Yeah.
So I could have like hired people that I thought was not smarter than me.
Yeah.
But I didn't do that. I wanted to bring people that complemented my weaknesses, that they're strong.
Yeah.
And I think God had put that in my heart to do that, to be so comfortable in my position, to know that he put me there.
Yeah.
That if I wanted to be successful, that I need to bring people around me to do that.
So good.
And that's what I've done. I brought some smart people around me. My team is very, very, I'm only successful with the people around me.
Right.
So I have some good men at the mission.
Yeah.
And good women that are helping bring the mission to where it's at today too.
Yeah.
It reminds me of
can't hear you, Patrick.
It reminds me of I heard a brother say one time, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called.
Yeah.
And so that's what he's doing in your life, where at some point you're like, oh, am I even to take this,
Yeah.
to see how much this entails.
That's so good.
But God will continue to put those people in your life to build you up. He's going to qualify you during that.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have gave you the keys to drive. He didn't think you knew how to drive.
Right.
I hope not.
That's good. That's good. So what is the mission of the gospel mission, man? Like tell us what that story's about.
Yeah, the mission really exists to provide a place for men and women and kids and youth to come and feel safe, and not only feel safe, but to hear the hope of the gospel as the world itself is crumbling right in front of our eyes. People want to hear about hope, and people want to hear, that there is something other than this life.
Yeah.
And we want to be a beacon to that gospel component. So that gospel is centered around everything that we do, is that transformation, that God loves them, that he wants to be a part of their life, that he accepts them.
Yeah.
And all of our programs that we do there are centered around that.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. So what is the population? How many do you serve on a monthly basis, yearly basis?
Yeah, so daily we're serving 225 men, women, and kids in direct services, providing shelter, clothing, and food.
Yeah.
We have 30, 40 kids that are coming from the community around for our youth after school program.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're serving close to 300 people.
Wow.
When it comes to shelter, youth, and then food
Wow.
on a daily basis.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing, man.
I've always wanted, because people drive by that
all
the time.
Yeah, no.
And if you're listening to this podcast, please stop in. Just like go and see what they do. I told a brother one time, I don't know why they don't put a big banner on the Modesto Gospel Mission that says, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, come on in.
That's good.
Well, that's I mean,
that's good.
I can't tell you how many times I've given tours and people are like, "Oh, I can't believe this is what you guys do here."
Yeah.
It's one after another. We have a lot of people that don't realize we drive by, and I used to drive by all the time with my dad.
Yeah.
And never even stop in there, or even lived across the street for a point in time in my life when I was in my early 20s and never walked across the street.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's normal to do that, but God is all about serving, man, and he wants to use your gifts. And
So
sometimes like we can use your giftings at the gospel mission.
Yeah.
Like, whatever that gift is, we want to bring that out, because I believe everybody has a gift.
I'm gonna capture that right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're listening.
Yeah.
You're at the gym. You're mowing your lawn. You're cleaning your house. You're
on the toilet.
You're on a drive. Sorry, that's Jose. Man, Jason's interview is touched a lot of things.
Yes.
I really feel God's telling in my heart to volunteer or to get involved.
Yes.
If you were to bullet point that, and you're talking to the world right now, and say, at the Modesto Gospel Mission, if you want to help, if you want, what would you say?
Yeah, if you're at the Modesto Gospel Mission, you want to mentor and come alongside men and women and do one-on-one life with them, we want to see you. Yeah,
it's good. And there's a QR code there with their website. You just scan that and you go directly there. And they have upcoming events. What's one of your big events coming up? Is it the Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we got Thanksgiving coming up. We do coats. We do a bundle up event. And then Christmas, we give out Christmas gifts to all the kids in the community.
So what would you say if people want to donate? What would be something that is in need right now?
Yeah, so one thing that's always in need is cash.
Okay. And you can do that on the website as well.
But no, as we get closer and closer, jackets or that's going to be need as we get into colder weather for Thanksgiving. And kids' Christmas presents are always in need, because we'll see basically about 1,600 to 1,800 families come through, or individuals, but which takes a lot of Christmas, and we're giving every kid 2 or 3 cool gifts. We transform our chapel and we make it all about the kids for Christmas. So we're going to need Christmas gifts, from teen gifts all the way down to kids.
I was listening to a short video on the amount of money LA County has received regarding homelessness and help, and how little has actually been done in certain counties over there. And people are getting paid for their titles and stuff like that. What do you feel needs to happen with the homeless situation in Modesto? And nobody has
in Stanislaus
County. Nobody has an immediate, but What would you like to say?
What would be your big idea?
Big ideas,
Yeah.
or just what's on your heart about the homeless
Yeah, I
situation?
think
Because you've been on that side,
yeah,
Yeah.
and you've been on this side.
Mm-hmm.
I think number one is you can't throw money at the problem.
It's good.
Is you're not going to be able to throw money in to solve the problem, because the problem is rooted in the heart
Yeah.
of men and women, and that heart is lost, and that heart is very easily driven in addiction and mental health.
Yeah.
And there's a real reality that this fight isn't against flesh and blood, but against principalities and against the darkness of this world. So we have to realize that too, that there's a fight out here.
Mm.
And really the one center that I really believe, the one center of hope, is that we share that gospel component. And that's the one thing that most take out of the equation is the religious component. They don't want, and then that makes sense to me. Like, that's,
Right.
the enemy is never going to want you to hear the hope and that transformation. So I think that is the silver bullet, because you have to change the heart for that to change the issue.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other issues too with it too, but that's the biggest thing. I think if everybody would get down to their knees and really do an inventory inside, and to be open to God, and not just because society says he's not real, but to really look into figuring out if he is, and to search it out like you were searching out for anything else. That's what I think would really help.
That's so good, man. And I'm a firm believer of that. And one of the things, to kind of wrap up here, one of the things that really I remember is this, man. I grew up in an airport, and I would travel, up and down. I would go to Loma, and several times I would go to this building, and we would eat, and sometimes get some new shoes, sometimes get some jackets, and especially in the wintertime. And one thing I didn't know was we were eating at the gospel mission. I didn't know that. I'm not putting any shame or anything on my parents, but at that time we were living homeless. And we were living homeless, meaning we had a roof, but we really couldn't afford to eat dinner sometimes. And stuff like that. And sometimes they would give us groceries. Right. And so growing up, I didn't know that that's where we were going. And I'm thankful, man. I'm thankful for the gospel mission, man, because in the time of my family's need, it met the need, and we had a house. We weren't completely homeless. And so I can see that now growing up, 42, gonna be 43. Dang, next month.
Wow.
I'll be 43. Híjole. But yeah, growing up now and going back, I have a heart for the mission, just because it filled my belly, and my brothers and sisters and my parents and sometimes my grandma and my neighbors, man. It was a blessing to the community there. And so I would say, 6 years old all the way up to maybe 17. There was times I was there.
That's such a good point. Such a good point, because whoever's listening might go like, I'm not a drug addict.
Right.
I'm not trying to walk in there like what will people think of me? It might be food. It might be clothing.
Totally.
Your basics and need that help. But we're stubborn. We're called sheep for a reason. So we're stubborn. Somebody's out there. They're a drug addict. They're lost. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired. They are embarrassed because I shouldn't have to ask for food, and I shouldn't have to ask for somebody to help my family. I should be doing that. But they're barely making it. They're living check to check. And everybody's one, car accident, illness, job loss. Everybody's one car accident, job loss, illness from being homeless a lot of times. So, but the stubbornness of humans that don't want to reach out for that need. What would you tell them what would you tell them? Go ahead and walk in. Take that first step. What would you tell them?
I mean, I think it's just taking that first step and wanting to change your life, and really only you can do that. Like, the person has to be ready. I I can't change your life.
That's
I
right.
can encourage you and I
Right.
can call you out on your stuff,
Yes.
but I can't really change the path. You got to make that decision.
So good.
So, I mean, one of the things I will say that we want to bring the dignity back to that person. We
Yes.
want, and so like if somebody's has some food insecurity, like get a hold of us. Like
That's
you
good.
can come in
Yes.
without your family,
Right.
so you can keep your dignity.
So
And I'll
good.
give you a food box so you could take home with you.
So good.
And then those are the types of things that we want to bring back, is that person's identity, how we treat that person. But there is a
Yes.
place, if you really have nowhere to go, there's a place that you can go to. There's not only one place, there's multiple places in our
Yeah.
community.
That's so good, man.
We should know that.
Yes.
We should know that. You know, I taught criminal justice at a local college for a while. And then, but I said, it's okay to be an officer, but do you know in your community, because I had students from Bay Area, Stockton, you know, Merced, do you know in your community where to tell people to get food, where to tell people to get diapers, what to for mental health services? And us as a community, we need to know that.
Yes.
And so if somebody was to ask me, I could say Minnesota Gospel Mission,
Yes.
and Victory Life Center off Woodland Avenue. They have
Yes.
an amazing food center.
Mhm.
But where else?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
the
So-
house church does
Right.
it, you know. So the house church does a drive up where you can drive up and get food.
Yeah.
Big Valley Grace does. They have a food pantry
Yep.
in back. So
Yes.
there's Interfaith. Figs is doing, you know, food delivery. They're
Yep.
going mobile in that area.
Yep.
There's a shower shuttle. If you need to get a shower, you can
Yep.
go and get a shower. There's a laundry shuttle through the shower shuttle with
Brother
Dean's,
Dean.
Yeah,
Brother
Dean's
Dean.
Ministry.
Yeah.
That you can go. They have a spot on our campus. You can get your laundry done if you need laundry, if you need that done. The
Yes.
Salvation Army, you know, you can go there. There's a low barrier shelter where you can go take your pets, partners, and
I want to
possessions.
cry, man.
I know,
You're
man.
just speaking just
Yes.
life. You're
Yeah,
speaking
there's
life.
the Love Center, you know,
So
that you can
good.
go to. That it's Woodland Church that you can go to and get a food box.
Yeah.
And there's a Redwoods if you're a woman with kids and you have a CPS case you can go
Yes.
to and get. There's the Patterson. There's out there with Jenny Boyer and
Yep.
and Patterson home where they took their shipping containers and transformed it out in Patterson.
It's beautiful.
City of Riverbank is doing something out there with Riverbank. They're doing a drop-in center over there. You know, you have Oakdale coming to the table.
Yep.
You have a lot of different resources. There's so much. The Turlock Gospel Mission over in Turlock.
Yeah.
I can go on, and
Yep.
Teen Challenge in Turlock. I can
Yep.
just keep going on and on and on. You know, Youth for Christ. I mean, you got in their schools. They're coming into the campuses. They're doing city life, and it
Yes.
just continues to go on and on. And there's so many different resources that you can get in this community. We really have a beautiful community that wants to help.
Yes.
We have enough help out there.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yes.
Listen,
Yes.
if your age starts with a 1, and you young kids out there, I want you to take that sound bite
Yeah.
what Jason just did.
Yeah.
That sound bite right there.
So good.
We need to put that on some
Yeah.
kind of social media
Yeah.
where you guys your young kids do all your cool words.
Yeah. We need some
And then
help
some
there.
music in the background. You know, me and Jose,
We're
I
looking for media guys.
I
So
know
if
how
you're,
to turn the
you're the
computer
teenagers,
on.
you guys
Yeah.
got the gift.
I know
Holla.
I know how to put in the gas. That's
Right.
it. I don't know how to change the oil. But that soundbite right there is journeyman.
That's
that soundbite
right.
right there is
Yes.
community, faith, family, community.
Yes.
That is what we're talking
That's
about. I, you know what? If there was enough room, I'd do a backflip.
Hey.
But
Take
y'all-
it easy.
Y'all might want to tune in next week.
I need to stretch a little bit.
That was
Yeah.
the core.
Yes.
Jason, that is the core of what we're trying to do.
That's right.
Just thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, man. And you know, one of the things that we like to do, and I took this line from Patrick, man, is we like to give flowers. Patrick, can you explain that? What does that mean to Jason?
I took it from somebody
Yeah.
else. I didn't think of it myself.
if you're not stealing, you're not caring.
Hey,
Right? I either took it from somebody else or it was inspired by the Holy Spirit.
Hey.
So I don't take credit for anything I say. A podcast called The Pivot, amazing podcast. And they say give flowers, and basically the flowers are don't wait for a funeral to give somebody flowers. Don't wait for a funeral to stand at a podium and say good things about that person.
Yeah.
Start saying it now. Give your flowers now. Give your compliments now. With families, quit meeting each other at funerals.
That's right.
And you guys should be getting in touch with each other now.
Mhm.
The flower, the what I would say to you, and by the way, everybody, I met Jason an hour ago.
Yeah.
I met Jason an hour ago. And I'm already clapping it, and I already told this man I'd do a backflip for him.
That's a big deal.
The thing of what we've been called to do we say, we have a big belief here in Dream is do what you've been called to do. Continue doing what you've been called to do,
That's right.
even on the days you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then, so my flowers to you would be a big thank you
Yes.
for those days where you didn't want to get out of bed. Those days where depression hit. Those days where there was chaos in the work life. Those days where you were betrayed. Those days where there was burnt bridges. I'm just throwing this stuff out there because I'm very sure in a big organization these things have happened.
Yeah.
Sure.
I just want to say thank you for continuing to do it on those days, even when it wasn't, maybe you didn't feel like it, or maybe what the passion was, that you still did it because the feelings went like this, but the commitment went like this. And so you remained committed. And God has been with you through it all.
Yeah.
God was there every step of the way.
Yeah.
And he's going to continue walking with you. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, man. And I just want to say thank you, man, too, for just being a brother, man, and being a friend, being able to step into the arena, man. This story right here, if you're barely tuning in, go back and rewind it from the beginning. You can hear from addiction to CEO to advancing people in and out of their out of their homelessness into a life of hope, dignity, integrity, and jobs, and so much more, man. But I want to thank you, bro. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for being a man who walks with God and hears God, and really kind of serving to the least of these, man. That I believe Jesus is there. I believe He's doing what He needs to do, and I'm honored to know you as a brother. And thank you for sharing your testimony here, man.
Awesome.
Appreciate
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Is there any last words
Yeah.
you want to tell the audience?
Tell the world,
Yeah,
man. If there's one or two lines that you would tell the old Jason out there right now, what would that be?
I think the biggest thing is to stay committed to what you want in your life. And I think second thing is sometimes you got to attend your own funeral and walk it back.
That's good.
And to change your life, what you want people to say about you, and you got to walk that back, and you got to live that out.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we all have something that we're guaranteed, and that's to live and that's to die.
Yes.
And so every day I try to stop and smell the roses and the flowers.
So good.
And spend the time with the people that I love, which is my wife and my kid.
Yes.
They are that's the number one resource in my life. Even though the job is great and ministry is good and God is always going to be first in my life, those two are. So make sure you hug the people around you. You love the people that are around you that love you, and just cherish that and nurture that.
Yeah.
More than anything.
Shout out to your wife. Give your wife's name. You got to tell her you love her, man, on public television.
Yeah,
I mean,
better.
I love you, Gina.
That's what I'm talking about, man. See, I'm just trying to help you out here, man. Trying to help you after the pod, you know what I mean? But man, you know what? Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you so much, man. Bless you. And we are super excited and honored to house you. Again, if you're looking to get involved in the gospel mission, there's a QR code on your screen. Scan that. It'll take you to the website directly. There's a way to donate. There's a way to serve. There's a way to volunteer for their upcoming big events for Thanksgiving, or their Christmas event as well. Homelessness is not just going to happen overnight. It's not going to, be done overnight. It's not going to be fixed. It's not, the gospel mission is not doing it on their own. You heard the resources that are out there. It's a collaborative spirit, a way to get involved, a way to serve the least of these with your gifts, talents, and opportunities to bring other folks alongside that. And again, if you're, need of food, get a hold of the gospel mission. They'll help you out as best as they can with integrity, and they'll, your dignity will still be there. And it was a blessing for me and my family. But I'm so thankful again, Jason, for being on. Thank you, Patrick, for tuning in. Thank you all for dealing with our technical issues, man. But we got it happening, and I'm super excited, man, because next month we have Dominique Campbell from Oakland Bay area guy, another brother that is living out the mission of journeyman in the areas of faith, family, community, and entrepreneur, pastor / apostle, just amazing dude, man. And I believe he's got a powerful story to share with you all in the areas of faith, family, community. So tune in next month. We'll be here. Do us a favor, share this broadcast, hit the like. We'll see you next month.
All right.
But today we must take a wider look. Because of modern communication and modern technology, the whole world has become our neighborhood. And we are demographically moving closer and closer to each other, and we've become a neighborhood without becoming a brotherhood.
Journeyman is a platform where men can lay down their titles, grow together, learn from each other, and be accountable to each other. Many of us deal with several problems throughout our lives, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. At times, we may feel alone in our troubles. However, Journeyman is a space where you can feel safe expressing yourself with other men that are on the same path. Journeyman is a space for people like myself who never thought they would be living purposefully in their life.